cleared waivers and has already signed. We'll get into that. Pro Bowl rosters were announced. There's a new poll out from the NFL Players Association talking about the favorite coordinators in the NFL and some NFL coaching hot seat news. We'll get into that as well as the big fat poll today, talking some more Texas football. We'll get into that as well. Get into a little NBA talk, some sound from Hook 'em Up with Ian Robbie, Jerry Hamilton on the show this morning. We'll replay that interview. Some really good stuff on Texas recruits and what they did in all-star games the other day. We'll get into all of that. And, of course, your text messages, 512-447-3776. 512-447-3776 is the text line number. You guys drive the show. I just try to keep it on the rail. Whatever you want to talk about, you're the co-host. So you talk about it on the text line, you ask the questions, or you bring up the topics, your hot takes, and we'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. That's what we do here on the Sports Complex in the afternoon. It is also a celebration of days for Texas fans where we just remember and reminisce that 18 years ago today was one of the best days in all of our lives that we all enjoyed because Texas won the national championship. Vince Young went crazy in the game, and we all know what came from that. So great moments and great memories we have from that as well in the Rose Bowl. But all of that to lead us to some NFL talk. We'll get to Texas football in a little bit. There are some more players who declared for the draft today. We'll get into that in just a little bit and play some sound from Ian Robbie as well. But I do want to get into some NFL talks. We didn't talk much about them the last few days as we've been recapping Texas versus Washington. But now, we're moving on from that, and the national championship game is not till Monday, so we have a few more days to talk about that. So let's talk a little NFL. And today, the NFL Pro Bowl rosters were announced. Or yesterday late, or today this morning, I don't know. At some point between the last show and this show, the NFL Pro Bowl rosters were announced. The Texans get in with one player. Laramie Tunsil is the starting tackle, I should say, for the Pro Bowl. That is the one player they get on. They have some players on the reserve list. So they do have some players. C.J. Stroud did make the reserve list. Your quarterbacks are Tua, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes. So for C.J. Stroud in the AFC, it would have been difficult for him to get in there above that. The AFC South really not represented too much. Not a lot of Jags, not a lot of Colts, of course, not a lot of Titans. Derrick Henry does make it as a running back, along with James Cook and Raheem Mostert. Should tell you about how the running back scene in the AFC is changed, that those names are not necessarily who you thought would have been in the picture for the AFC. Wide receivers Tyreek Hill, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, and Jamar Chase are all in there as well. Some good players for that. But yeah, not a lot of AFC South guys, and the Texans only get one name in there. Several are on the reserve list as players will be injured and don't want to go, or you'll have players going to the Super Bowl, so they won't be able to go. And Texans have some people on that list that may be able to go. Justin Tucker also on that list as the kicker. That means that Cameron Dicker did not make it as the kicker. But if the Baltimore Ravens go to the Super Bowl, we could still see a Texas kicker replace a Texas kicker. We could see that as well. In the NFC, your quarterbacks are Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, and Matt Stafford, who had a really good end of season. Interesting to see him get back on that list in the NFC and get back to being a starting quarterback in the NFC Pro Bowl, or a quarterback in the NFC Pro Bowl. Brock Purdy is a starter. Dak Prescott is number 2. Christian McCaffrey, DeAndre Swift, the player that Philadelphia traded for from the Lions because the Lions get Jahmyr Gibbs in the draft, and so they feel they don't need him and Montgomery, so they trade him to the Eagles. Turns out to be a great trade for the Eagles. He makes the Pro Bowl. Kyren Williams from the Rams also in there. CeeDee Lamb is going to be a Pro Bowler. He's one of the starters alongside A.J. Brown. Mike Evans and Puka Nacua are on the bench for them. Zach Martin is one of your starting guards as well. Micah Parsons, of course, at the outside linebacker. Deron Bland at cornerback is going to be on the list. And both your punter and kicker, Brian Anger and Brandon Aubrey for the Cowboys, are both Pro Bowlers. A little bit of a snub. DeMarcus Lawrence is somebody that a lot of people felt should have been on this list on defensive end. But basically, he is saying his theory at this point, Aiden Hutchinson, Montez Sweat, and Nick Bosa are the 3 that get in a defensive end. His thought is, well, if we get to the Super Bowl, then I wouldn't be in the Pro Bowl anyway. I'll be in the Super Bowl, and that's better. But if the 49ers make the Super Bowl and Nick Bosa is now in the Super Bowl, he will now be off, and I will be picked to replace him. So I will be in the Super Bowl or the Pro Bowl is what he's saying, and he is assuming that either the Cowboys or the 49ers are going to get in, which, I mean, we don't know if that's true or not. The 49ers look like they have better odds right now than the Cowboys, but the Cowboys have their odds. But that was his theory of why he was not upset, because he figures he will be playing in one of them. And he's hoping that he'll be playing in the Super Bowl, which he should. A couple other names that were off the list that people wanted to see. Josh Allen, not a Pro Bowler, and Amon-Ra St. Brown from the Detroit Lions. A lot of people thought he should be on that list as well in the NFC. I don't know if you knock off Mike Evans there. Puka Nacua, you don't kind of want to see him go off either. A.J. Brown and CeeDee Lamb seem like no-brainers in this list. But I can see it. It's just hard when you only have that many picks, but those are your names for your Pro Bowlers and for the Texans and for the Cowboys there. There was also a poll that came out today from the NFL Players Association where they basically anonymously or protectedly asked a lot of NFL players about who their favorite coordinators were, and the list came out was kind of interesting because some of them you would expect to be on there were not on there. Some names you definitely would not expect to be on this list are on this list. They have 5 offensive coordinators, 5 defensive coordinators, and 5 special teams. They did not take the ones at the end because they didn't want to badmouth them. So that was one of the issues that the people who put this together in the NFL Players Association, they didn't necessarily want to give out the bottom 5 and like the lowest coordinators because they didn't want to try and hurt these guys getting other jobs. I think it would be interesting. I think we'd all like to see it, but they did not put that list out there. If you're offensive coordinators, let's go through and I'll give you the records afterwards because I think it's interesting. There's especially on the offensive side. The offensive side is much more interesting to me because, all right, Frank Smith in the Miami Dolphins is your most beloved or your most liked offensive coordinator, whether it's the way he communicates or the ease they can talk to him, whatever the categories that these players thought for. It was Frank Smith is your number 1. Thomas Brown, the Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator, who had his offensive coordinator, his offensive play calling, he had it, and then Frank Reich took it away to go in there, but then Frank Reich got fired, and he got the play calling back. Brian Schottenheimer from the Dallas Cowboys is actually number 3. Brian Callahan from the Cincinnati Bengals is number 4, and Kellen Moore coming in at number 5. Interesting to note there, only 2 of these offensive coordinators have play calling duties. Thomas Brown for the Panthers has play calling duties, and Kellen Moore has play calling duties for the Los Angeles Chargers. Those are the only 2. Zach Taylor calls the plays for the Bengals. Mike McCarthy calls the plays for the Dallas Cowboys, and Mike McDaniel calls the plays for the Miami Dolphins. Now the Dolphins are 11-5, so you may like him because he's not the play caller. He's the guy that if Mike McDaniel's doing whatever, he's your intermediary. You might like him a lot. For Thomas Brown, I'm sure he's just not Frank Reich. And those players, for whatever reason, it didn't hit with them. There are a lot of young players on that team, and they might like Thomas Brown a little bit more. He's a 2-14, though, so I don't know how much you'd want to be the guy who's beloved at 2-14. Brian Schottenheimer, again, not play calling, so must be getting along well with the players. It also, the Cowboys are on this list all 3 times. All 3 of their coordinators are on these lists, which could tell you, I think that's something to be said about what the culture is and what Jerry Jones has built in Dallas, is that he really tries to make this a family. It's important to him that the coaches he has in there are people that are, friendly with their players. I don't think he wants a disciplinarian coach in there. I think the whole building of what Jerry Jones wants to build with the Cowboys. They did the poll a few years ago about, the player friendliest teams for food and family and and everything in that, and of course the Cowboys were one of the top teams in that list as well. So it's no surprise to see that their coordinators are well liked, and that the Cowboys just in general are a type of team built around you don't say bad things are kept in the family, and if you ask, no matter what, even if it's random, that we're all good, we're good, we take good care of you so that you're happy and you're a happy player. It makes sense. So that side for the Cowboys is a good sign because you do want to have that as part of your team, especially when you're able to still win. You just need to get that winning edge at the end of the year. But Schottenheimer in there, not play calling duties. Brian Callahan, 8-8, no play calling duties. Kellen Moore, 5-11, play calling duties. Is this starting to be a negative on Kellen Moore? And I know this is coming from a guy who's not a Kellen Moore fan. But this was the problem, is he was loved in Dallas. And he couldn't get him over the hump. And then he goes to LA and they're just bad. And the offense doesn't, and Austin Eckler doesn't do anything. And we like the guy. Great. But that's not really what's important here. Because Eric Bieniemy's not on this list. And I know, and believe me, there was all the reports at the beginning of the year that people were mad at him and people didn't like what he was doing. And people were upset with him because they thought he was working too hard and pushing this team too hard. And people didn't like that Bieniemy wasn't on that list. I'd still rather have a coordinator, especially if they're going to be play calling, that is going to be a little bit tougher on my guys and is going to get them into the shape I need. And I'll have a head coach that may be nicer, but I need to have one. I can't have everybody be nice on a team. I don't know if that's going to get them there. We'll see with the Cowboys if they can get there this year. On the defensive side, Aaron Glenn is your number one ranked defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. He's got that defense playing pretty well. They're an 11-5 team. He is a former player, so I nothing I can say bad about Aaron Glenn. To note, all of the defensive coordinators do call plays for the defense. Steve Wilkes was also loved in Carolina when the interim head coach. The 49ers get him. He is a great coach and a great guy from all accounts. Dan Quinn comes in at number 3 for the Cowboys again at 11-5. Then Brian Flores comes in at number 4 for the Minnesota Vikings, 7-9. Brian Flores and the 79 Minnesota Vikings, I should say. But Brian Flores has always been known as somebody who is liked by his players, even when he was in Miami. Just didn't do him enough justice because he wasn't necessarily liked by his ownership, but he was liked by the players. And Raheem Morris from the Los Angeles Rams also. But I think that is, they've known each other for a long time. He's a good coach, and that's not surprising to see him on this list either. And of course, the Cowboys come in again as John Fassel is the number 1 ranked special teams coordinator for Dallas. And that's Chris Tabor is number 2 with the Carolina Panthers. He's now the interim head coach. Matt Daniels from the Minnesota Vikings. Dave Fitt from the Detroit Lions. And Darren Rizzi from the New Orleans Saints. Not surprising, though. You see the Vikings on here a couple times, the Lions on here a couple times, that these are teams that are kind of built to be that kind of organization and have that kind of community and culture within their team. But an interesting thing, the offensive coordinator playlist, it's an interesting look into what offensive players want to have. And I think the defensive list was kind of more what you would expect. They were good defensive coaches that sometimes were ex-players and could get on them, but they were all pretty much winning teams other than the Vikings. But that's not necessarily the defense's fault. Now, they're not a great defense, but it's not the defense's fault that, once Kirk Cousins went down, that team's not as good as it used to be. But if you look at what the offensive players, it seems that they like to be caught a little bit more, that maybe they don't like the play caller because they're not going in. But then the guy who comes over and consoles them that they didn't get enough reps or they didn't get the pass catcher, or, whoever it is, it seems to be the offensive players maybe like a nicer guy. That they maybe, and maybe that's a formula that you'd like to have a head coach that is your offensive play caller and the guy who can go do it, and then have an offensive coordinator that all your players enjoy that can go recruit and get you more offensive talent. That may be more of what you have to do going in the future. It's an interesting poll, though, when you look at it for just that it did not seem like there was a disciplinarian on that list, really, and especially not on the offensive side. I think defense will take it a little bit better just because of the kind of player it is to be a defensive player. One more thing I wanted to hit here before we get to the big fat poll is the coaching hot seats as we get into later in the season, and we are now week 18. We're into, the final run of games, and there's going to be a lot of guys sitting down. I'll play you some sound from Rod and Aaron a little bit later, talking about kind of what this season's been, why week 18 has some huge games and has some pretty bad games, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But I do want to go through some coaching hot seat rankings for you to watch through week 18 for something that you can kind of keep an eye on. As by the time we're coming back on Monday, some of these coaches probably won't be a coach anymore. Some of these coaches will probably be let go. We'll see the people moving on that don't make the playoffs. Those will probably happen within the next, if they play Saturday, maybe on Sunday. Sunday, it'll happen Monday before we come back on the air. You may see some of these coaches moving on. Of course, already fired this season is Frank Reich, Brandon Staley, and Josh McDaniels. I have these in somewhat of a tier system for the guys that we have, but already fired Frank Reich, Brandon Staley, and Josh McDaniels. We know those guys have all been let go of already. Frank Reich was the only one that was really surprising. Josh McDaniels, we could have told you a year ago, was a bad hire and shouldn't have been there. Brandon Staley, we told you for 2 years, needed to be fired. And Frank Reich was, since he was new there, you wondered if they were going to keep him longer, and they did. It didn't seem like it fit. He looked like he was done coaching when he was with Indy, and then ends up there, and I don't know why he got back into it so quick and why someone brought him back in so quick, but he did. Let's go to our next tier, though. It's almost a sure thing that these guys will not be back. And now, I don't know, fired for both of them. We'll start with Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera, you get a new ownership there in Washington. They want to take a new start. We don't know if Sam Howell will be the guy or not, but you probably want to bring someone new in there. It seems like the culture is kind of beyond repair with what it is right now. That may lead to Eric Bieniemy having to take off as well and find a new position. But it seems as if at a 4-12 Washington that Ron Rivera is going to be out of there. That would be what it would seem like. And then the other one, which seems like a short one, it's been talked about since, week 10, that Bill Belichick seems to be on his way out. That all of us seem to be watching and looking at Bill Belichick at this point. And the most damning thing I've heard from everyone around is that Bill Belichick, with all these rumors that have been swirling, and he's saying, we'll talk about it later, that Robert Kraft has not stepped up and said anything to quell the rumors. No one in that Patriots organization has come out and said, hey guys, this is one of the winningest coaches of all time. He's number 3 on the all-time wins list. And we're not just, let's not treat it like this. They won't even say that. They're just letting it happen. They're just letting him sit in the hot seat all season. Now, the question is, they may trade him. They may try to work a deal with him where he'll end up where he wants to end up. And, I think that's more the question is, how does this split happen? How do this, the dynasty walk away from each other where he's been in control for so long that you don't just want to fire him and then realize he knows all the passwords? You want to fire him and then realize you can't find anything in the office anymore because he was the guy who did everything? So I think there needs to be a more mutual parting ways, and I don't think Bill Belichick would mind it because Bill Belichick is 20-something wins away from being the all-time winningest coach, which you can get in 2 to 3 years. You can get there in 2 to 3 years. But you cannot get there in 2 to 3 years on the Patriots because they're not on that rebuild model right now, especially not with the pieces that are there of coaching and everything else that, Mac Jones, he's not going to work with Bill O'Brien in this offense right now. So, if he's your guy, then you got to get a new coach in there. It doesn't look like they have the pieces to rebuild this, and it looks like a 6-7 year plan to get into those 20 wins. And that's with everything working, right? And, of course, they're going to let him go if he doesn't turn it around within the next 3 or 4 years. And so it doesn't look like the plan. For me, the place that makes the most sense for him, not saying that maybe for them it'll be the what they want to do, or not for them it may not be feasible, but the Chargers make the most sense for me as a team that currently has an opening that it could make a splash for them, but he may not need the amount of money that it would take for them to make a splash hire of that level of a coach. It would bring a culture in there. They have a lot of good defensive players. Can he make those good defensive players into something special? He can have his offensive coordinator. You either keep Kellen Moore or he brings in whoever else he wants to bring in, and you have offensive talent there. There's the talent there to be a 10-win team for the next 3 seasons. And then when the contracts become too much and you have to kind of start to rebuild and everything else, you try and win a title there. You try and win a Super Bowl. Then in the next 3 to 4 years, then he can walk off into the sunset as the all-time winningest coach. And either he's got another ring or he's all-time winningest coach. And you move on from there and you rebuild the team that way. But I think Bill Belichick and Ron Rivera are both as good as gone at the end of the year. They will not be coaching their respective teams next season. And some guys that wouldn't be a shock. My next tier would not be a shock if they are gone. Personally, I would get rid of 2 or 3 of these guys, if not all 3. The third one I will get to is somewhat a question of what you do in the offseason. Arthur Smith for the Falcons, I get it. It's just not a good mix. He isn't playing the players that you keep getting him. You get Kyle Pitts, you get Bijan Robinson, you don't play them. And he can say, I don't have my quarterback, but I don't care. If you're not going to use the guys and you aren't going to go out and tell me what groceries I need to get, and you're not going to stop it and be the assertive person to tell us what we need, then you have to be able to play with the toys we give you. And he does not seem to be willing to play with that. And the one that flips with him is Matt Eberflus at Chicago is another name that if they decide to move on, and if they decide they're going to use their number one pick, which they are the number one pick in the draft because they own the Carolina Panthers' number one pick from the trade last year, if they use that number one pick for a quarterback and they want to bring in Caleb Williams, I think Eberflus is probably gone. You probably bring in a coach that says, we have a number one pick, we have the number 7 or 8 pick, whatever it is. We have these 2 really good picks. What do you want to do? We're also going to get something back for Justin Fields. We're going to trade him off. What do you want to, let's bring in someone else and rebuild. I think we could see that. But if we see that, then the other side is a team that could go for Justin Fields that may fit in to an Arthur Smith system, that he may be able to use this in an Arthur Smith system. Justin Fields could end up in Atlanta. That he could end up there and try and fit into that system with Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts and see if that works. And if they get him as a quarterback, I don't know if you get a new coach and get Justin Fields. So that may be something that keeps Arthur Smith's job. It may be something that loses up Matt Eberflus. But I don't see both of them coming back, because I think the only way you keep Matt Eberflus, or you get rid of Matt Eberflus, or you get rid of him if you're getting a new pick, the only reason you keep him is because you are basically going to give him another year and give him one more year. Mike Vrabel, the other one, that would not be a shock. He's done really well at Tennessee. It seems to be, though, that something's missing there, and it might be best for both of them to move on. But Matt Eberflus, Arthur Smith, both may fall into the next category, which is the 1 more year category. We know that Robert Saleh, they have said that Robert Saleh will be coming back for another year. Brian Daboll falls into that. I don't think they let him go. They just signed Daniel Jones. He's done well enough with some other guys that I think you give him another year to see if he can fix the problems there in New York. Dennis Allen in New Orleans, they have Derek Carr under another year of contract. You probably don't want to bring another coach with Derek Carr still there. And Todd Bowles, with what he did to turn the team around later in the season, get them to 8-8 and possibly into a playoff spot and winning the division. You probably give him another year to figure out what you can do before you kind of move forward. And again, get your guy at quarterback, because, this may be another Baker Mayfield rental year or Baker Mayfield on a manageable contract year. Another weird category is the make us an offer category. Mike Tomlin, 9-7, does it again, but it feels like it's just he's been there so long. And I know this is what the Steelers do, but they may feel like this is the time to move into if you give us a first-round pick for him, if somebody out there really wants him and they want to build the culture that Tomlin has and you want to give us something for him, we will take your pick, and then we will rebuild with a new coach, and we will go in our new direction. We're not going to fire him. We're not firing Mike Tomlin. I don't think he gets fired, but he could get traded if the right offer comes along and someone decides they want to bring in that Tomlin power. Give them both a fresh start. And 2 more names to notice. Sean McDermott, Mike McCarthy are both better win in the playoffs. If either one of those is a first-round exit, they could easily be fired. A second-round exit, still possible firing. I think if you get past that, you're probably okay. I know Jerry won Super Bowl or bust, but I think you win 1 or 2 playoff games, you're probably okay. But if you lose that first playoff game, either one of these guys, very likely that they get hit on the hot seat and they get put into a position. Even though Mike McCarthy's well-liked, he will not be liked in Dallas if they come up short once again. If everything they've done this season, the positives and everything else, and then they didn't, then, man, it starts to look more and more like give this team to Dan Quinn and get us a real offensive play caller. But hopefully that won't become a problem for the Dallas Cowboys. Hopefully they'll be able to get a win in there, and then everyone will be happy. We also should know Dalvin Cook did clear waivers today. At 3 p.m., Dalvin Cook cleared waivers. And by 4 p.m., he had signed with the Baltimore Ravens, so the Dallas Cowboys not going to get a shot at Dalvin Cook. He is going to be joining the Baltimore Ravens. All right. Let's hit the big fat poll of the day before we hit the break. If I can get the sounder to work, we'll get there. Trust me, guys, we'll get there. It's a Thursday. Got to get back.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the Day on the Horn.
All right. Big Fat Poll of the Day. Text line's open. 512-447-3776. I want to ask you this because we just talked about the hot seats and the coaching poll. Just out there, who's your least favorite NFL coach of all time? I feel like we'll get some Jeff Fishers for sure. But do you have a coach out there that you just can't stand in the NFL? Text that one in 512-447-3776. And, of course, let us know why. And who was your MVP for the season for Texas football? We're going to come back and talk some Texas football real quick. A couple players declaring themselves for the draft. So we'll get into that when we come back. But who's your MVP for the season? Some positivity. Who is the guy that you felt carried this team the best and was the most valuable player for Texas in 2023? And one game in 2024, which, man, it's been a while. All right. 512-447-3776 is the text line. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get into some Texas talk and a little sound from Hook 'em Up with Ian Robbie right here on the Sports Complex on the Horns 1019 AM 1260, the Horns app, and hornfm.com. Back on the sports complex here on the Horn on a Thursday afternoon. Just talked a lot of NFL. Going to get into some Texas football, some talk. But it does feel like a Blues week. You know, we'll get over it. Tomorrow we'll do a 5-1-2 Friday. Next week is a whole new week. Get back into some peppier music. But it felt like a Blues week. I was listening to some blues all week long. So I thought I'd play some for you here on the show. It was a musical theme for the week. Text line's open, 512-447-3776 is the text line number. Polls of the day. Who is your least favorite NFL coach of all time? I'm talking about the hot seat, and there were some guys in there, maybe. Throw some guys in there if you have one. And who's the MVP for the season for Texas this season? Send that in as well. 512-447-3776. We're going to talk a little Texas football. By the way, if you have not seen, I'm going to tell you about the two other players that you probably already know about that are leaving Texas to clear for the draft. Jordan Whittington did post today a thank you to Texas. If you've not watched it, I definitely recommend you can go find it on all the social media for the Texas Longhorns or Texas football or whatever it is. They'll have the Jordan Whittington saying thank you. Very cool for him to say that, and definitely did the I got to play them to Texas and play at Texas, but I got to play for Texas is what he said, and very cool to see that. Definitely going to be missed on the 40 acres. Is Jordan Whittington. Also, the news came out today. We know Xavier Worthy is moving on. We know T'Vondre Sweat has said he is most likely moving on. I don't think he said it completely, but we read between the lines there. Alfred Collins has said he's coming back. Our reports are that he's coming back. Two other names, though, declared for the draft today. Jonathan Brooks had a great season for Texas. Of course, it ends short when he tears his ACL. However, he is one of the top-ranked running backs in this class. I think he understands with the injury that, if he has another injury like that next year and they're kind of hard to prevent another major injury, then it's going to hurt his draft stock a lot more than it would just having this one. Maybe take that step. CJ Baxter is there. Jaden Blue is there. They're getting some new recruits in. This is not, he's leaving the room in a good place. He's left Texas better than he's found it. So no problem with Jonathan Brooks taking that next step. He, be able to get in the rehab, be able to move on with everything, focus on football. Happy for him declaring for the draft today, and Byron Murphy also declaring for the draft. There was the inkling of hope that he may come back for another year. However, when you see that he is getting projected as a late first rounder, early second rounder, when you get into that first round range, it's hard to turn it down. It's hard to turn it down. And right now he is projected in that first round range. Had a great Sugar Bowl. Was used in that position where they double-teamed T'Vondre Sweat a lot in that game and tried to make him a non-factor. So Byron Murphy had to step up, and he did in a lot of key moments for Texas. So disappointing to see that Byron Murphy and Dylan Brooks are moving on, but good for them in their careers. That is all the names I've seen so far. We haven't seen any more. Texas is still in that period where I think they're kind of spacing them out a little bit. I think guys don't necessarily want to step on each other's toes and announcing, so we may see an offensive or a defensive, and we'll see where we go. There were some early Heisman odds I've seen today where Quinn Ewers is listed as the new favorite. He's atop the favorites for the Heisman Trophy odds for next season. He's already been ranked in a list of the best quarterback in the SEC going into next season. So all reports are that they're assuming Quinn Ewers is coming back. He is not announced yet, but it seems to be the reports that earlier seem to be more and more true that he's coming back. We've not heard anything else, but if Vegas and everybody else would lead you to believe that they think he is coming back to play in the SEC next season for Texas. I want to play you sound from Hook 'em Up with Ian Rob B. Then we'll get back to the text line 512-447-3776. Talking about whatever you guys want to talk about. So we're asking you about your most hated coaches. We're asking you about your MVP, but anything else you guys want to talk about, hit us up on the text line and we'll talk about it because you guys kind of drive the show. Whatever you guys want to talk about, we'll talk about. But I do want to play this sound about that Rod Babers and Aaron Hogan were talking about this morning. As we were talking about the coaches, there's also been some issues with the quarterback play in the NFL, and a lot of guys sitting out this last week and a lot of guys missing time. Rod kind of breaks it down for you on the injuries this season at quarterback and what it's left the NFL with and maybe what they need to do moving forward. It's Hook 'em Up with Ian Rob B. A little replay here on the Sports Complex.
One of the things I've been keeping up with in the NFL are the quarterback injuries and really the quarterback turnover for every team. There's been a ton of it this year. They're coming really close to what they did last season And last season was a record-setting year for the NFL in terms of the amount of unique starting quarterbacks. I mean, different starting quarterbacks for teams. And this season, you're at 20 different teams that have used multiple quarterbacks, and they're going to shatter that number in Week 18. Now, I don't count Week 18 because it's mostly just teams that are resting guys. I believe Kansas City these are teams that have openly already said that they're going to rest their starting quarterback for Week 18. Kansas City, Cleveland, the Rams, and obviously the Chargers have already started. Easton Stick's our guy. It's Denver. They did it for different reasons because of Russell Wilson's contract. They decided they wanted to basically, they didn't want to pay his injury bonus. He had an injury bonus that if he played every game, that would be guaranteed. They didn't want to pay it, so they decided, no, we're going to bench you. So we don't have to pay that bonus. And Baltimore, they're going to sit Lamar Jackson. So you'll end up probably shattering the record from last season, but not because of injury, mostly because they're sitting guys. What's really interesting about this right now, you start looking at a whopping right now, it looks like just 9 teams will start one quarterback the entire season, just 9. That's a new low for the 32-team era, and that's the lowest since 1999. I believe they were at 8. But it's right now in the NFL, you got to make sure you got your backup quarterback set because you're going to need them. The way it's trending right now, everybody's going to have a backup quarterback start a crucial, critical game at least one point. And all the teams that are trending toward being the top teams, their quarterbacks should stay healthy. A lot of it was a battle of attrition. Being able to keep your quarterback healthy. Cowboys can now win a division because their quarterback stayed healthy. There are a lot of reports that Jalen Hurts is not healthy. And Lamar Jackson, for the first time in a long time, he stayed healthy and played the entire season. We haven't had that. There's been a lot of talk about Lamar Jackson and his durability. He stayed healthy. Tua was another quarterback that stayed healthy. So Miami's prospects, they ended up winning double-digit games because he stayed healthy. I think a lot of it is quarterback health. And the NFL right now is dealing with a ton of quarterback injuries, and it's not because they're not taking care of the quarterbacks. I think it's more about the offensive line, and it's more about really just the number of pass attempts where quarterbacks are exposed. I mean, it's more about that because it's definitely not about the NFL protecting them. They protect them more than ever, but you're starting to see more and more. So at 20 teams right now, that's where they are in terms of unique teams that have used multiple starting quarterbacks in the season, which is, like I said, close to the record. I think this weekend they'll shatter the record because all the teams are sitting their quarterbacks. Let's talk about, since we're talking about the NFL real quick, let's get into the MVP odds right now because it says right now that Lamar Jackson is the far and ahead odds-on favorite to win MVP, and it's not even close anymore. He is at minus 10,000. Current MVP odds, according to ESPN Bet. This is the latest. It turned so quickly. Remember at one point we were talking about Dak Prescott with the best odds to win MVP, and then the conversation shifted to, I believe it kind of shifted honestly to Christian McCaffrey and Brock Purdy after that, and now he's at minus 10,000 odds to win now. To win the MVP.
Well, and we said that about Dak. They all had a chance to make their case in December because it was very close and there wasn't a clear favorite. And pretty clearly, Lamar Jackson, with his performance on Monday Night Football against the 49ers, followed up by a 5-touchdown pass performance against Miami the next weekend.
It's unbelievable.
He made his case, and he pretty much claimed it. And now he's going to sit, too, this weekend. Huntley's going to start for Baltimore because they're clearly the 1 seed and no risk for Lamar Jackson. So, yeah, I think he's the MVP.
I don't know. 49ers have not announced if Brock Purdy is going to sit or start.
I think he's sitting.
He's sitting too?
McCaffrey's out with a calf, but I think Purdy's sitting because they don't have anything to play for him.
Yeah.
There's no reason to risk it.
I don't know if I've seen it announced yet. I wouldn't be shocked if Shano played him, honestly, just because he's been a little erratic lately. And I wouldn't be shocked if he played early and then he sat him, but he may decide that he's just sitting, period. Don't want to risk it. I can see that too. But a lot of teams deciding, Kansas City, they're deciding to sit Patrick Mahomes, even Cleveland sitting Joe Flacco. Because they don't want to risk something happening to Joe Flacco, even though they're on their fourth quarterback being Joe Flacco. He's playing so well, they don't want to risk it. So a lot of teams not risking it. So then Week 18 right now, not looking great for the NFL, that decision, because you got a few games that are really, really important. But sitting your starting quarterback for all of your stars for about 5 teams, in addition to as I pointed out, 20 teams that have played multiple starting quarterbacks this year. The 18 games may be something that they're not going to reconsider it. Maybe something they have to look at in terms of its effect on the players and the injuries to the quarterback position, because you're not even having not even half your starting quarterbacks from the season are starting week 18.
Yeah.
And obviously some just sitting because they already have everything locked up, but the other half is because of injury. That's not what the NFL. That's not what they wanted when they had the thought of another game added to the season. That's not what they envisioned.
Well, look, if you can't improve or drop in your playoff position, Cleveland, San Francisco. It says here Brock Purdy will not play against the Rams. Okay. This is from Sports Illustrated. He's going to get the full week of practice. They're going to give him all the reps as the first team quarterback. Your guy Kyle Shanahan said they're going to prepare like he's playing, but then he's not going to play. Why risk it at that point? They're going to bring up the 7 players off the practice squad. And again, they've sewn up. That's how big that Detroit loss to Dallas was, because they would have had to play these guys this week to secure the 1 seed. Because Detroit could have come and taken it from them. Now they have the ability to rest these guys, including Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey and whoever else they're going to sit this weekend. But he did say we want to keep Brock sharp, and so he's going to get the first team practice reps.
That makes sense. I figured they wanted to try to keep him. You don't want him to have a... Sam
Darnold will start that game.
Okay, you don't want him to have a lull because he hasn't been that consistent at the end of the season, but you want to safeguard against injury. So basically, the NFL has decided to move they got rid of the 4th preseason game. This is the 4th preseason game for a lot of teams then. If they're just moving up, right? If they're moving up practice squad guys,
you're right about that,
and they're playing backup quarterbacks in games that don't matter. This is essentially their preseason game. They're just doing it at the end of the season. Especially if they're going to play all the young guys who haven't gotten a chance to play. It's going to be that kind of game. And I think half the league is basically in that position right now.
Yeah, of the 32 teams. I mean, Houston and Indianapolis is a playoff game on Saturday night.
The Cowboys.
Jacksonville at Tennessee matters because Jacksonville can sew up the division, but it doesn't matter to Tennessee.
But Vrabel did say that. I mean, I think he dropped a couple of expletives, but he did remark that the game matters to them, and they're all in.
They're all in.
He said they're all in.
Yeah, they're all in. So there are games that do matter, but yes, there's a high majority that do not. Don't have much bearing because the teams are already either out of the playoffs completely or they can't move in their current position in the slot in their conference. And so, yes. But, man, the couple of them, that means there'll just be a lot of eyeballs on the ones that do matter the most. So
it will be. That Texans game, I mean, there'll be a lot of eyeballs on that Texans game. That's a big game for the Texans. One of the biggest games they've had in the last 4 or 5 years.
Rod, since the Chiefs collapse. That's the biggest game since the Chiefs collapse game.
Bill O'Brien was there.
Yeah,
you're right.
I mean, this game means a 10-win season and a trip to the playoffs. And, and it's same for the Colts. And both teams have first-year head coaches. Both teams have first-year quarterbacks, essentially. So, yeah, that's a huge one.
Well, Gardner Minshew.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, to win it with the backup, that'd be impressive to go and make the playoffs in your first year with a backup quarterback. That's, like I said, that's some damn good coaching. And the Philadelphia Eagles are missing it. They're missing it. You can tell.
Yeah, with Shane Steichen for sure. So we'll look at those. Obviously, the Cowboys have to beat the Commanders. That game matters. Doesn't matter to the Commanders. Commanders are not any good at 4-12, but the Cowboys have to win that game to lock up the division and the 2 seed in the NFC. Meanwhile, the Eagles are going to be playing the Giants for the second time in 3 weeks in New York. They need to win that game and hope the Cowboys lose. That game is Sunday afternoon, so that game matters. Bills play the Dolphins in Miami. That's an important game to the Bills. Bills need to win that game.
Yeah, the Bills have to win that game.
Bills need to win that game with Josh Allen, and they've improved to 10-6 now. They'd like to get to 11 wins. So, yeah, I mean, there's some that matter, but you're right. There's so many that don't. But there are several that are important, so you'll just pay attention to those.
Yeah, like I said, Week 18 to me, not that sexy.
No,
and I don't know how sexy it was last season either. I got to go back and check it. And a lot of it is the quarterback injuries for the NFL.
Yeah, the quarterback injuries in the NFL have been an issue so far this season, but, we get through to Week 18, you get the teams in the playoffs, you're ready to go. I know that my Texans are going to have a good matchup against the Colts. Hopefully they get the win. C.J. Stroud looks healthy there, so I'll take what I can get. But that is also why they make it such a flex schedule in Week 18 so that they can kind of put the games. They don't necessarily have all the good games at once, and then some bad games sticking everywhere else. You put them out and you put the matchups and all the playoff scenarios, which I'm sure we'll go through some playoff scenarios tomorrow and start to pick through and what teams need to have happen to get to where they want to be. we can go through all of that tomorrow. But why don't we take a break? We'll come back. We'll get to the text line. 512-447-3776 is the text line number. We're going to get to you when we come back. Anything you want to talk about? Also, who is the least liked NFL coach in history? You throw that one for me and tell me why that is. And also, who was your MVP for the season for the Longhorns? Send those both in to me. Anything else you guys want to hit up and talk about? Send that in as well. 512-447-3776 is the text line. We'll be back here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on a Friday afternoon, playing the blues for you. Just felt like the blues this week. You know, feels like winter. It's a new year, and I know some people are like, start off the new year. Huh? It just felt like a blues week. So playing some blues for you throughout the week. Text line's open, 512-447-3776. 512-447-3776 is the text line number. If you want to join the conversation, texter says, who is that intro music? If you mean for the show, it is the Heebie Jeebies. The song's called No Doubt. They're a local band. And now the singer and some of the members play in a band called 80H Project, the number 80, the letter H, 80H Project. So you can check them out. They still play around town. A very good band. If you want to check them out. If you were talking about the blues song that I played right before you sent that was from Blues Delight. It was from Blues Delight. It was called Slightly Hungover. And the one we just played was Magic Sam. So that was your music if you need that on the text line. Those are all those songs. Texter says for the most disliked, the least liked NFL head coach, Buddy Ryan or Jim Fisher. Yeah, I think Fisher's going to get a solid number of them. Buddy Ryan will get a few too. He will get a few too. I got you on that one. If you want to go into further, but I think we know why on both of those. Nate says, stick to your Texans playoffs hope. Look, I think we both agree on the Cowboys, Nate. You know that we have agreements on this. I'm rooting for the Cowboys. I just think they need a running game. But they did sign a running back. I got to look up his name. They signed a guy to their practice squad out of Texas Tech. He was at Texas Tech a couple years ago, I believe. He has been on a couple teams' practice squads. SaRodorick Thompson is who the Cowboys have signed to their practice squad this week. I don't know if that means he's going to play. He's never played in the NFL. He's played on practice squads, but that was who they signed. So if Rico, we know that Deuce Vaughn is now on the IR. Rico Dowdle, he was practicing this week, but if he has another setback, I believe your next running back would be SaRodorick Thompson from Texas Tech. So that would be who you'd have at Dallas. Jason Garrett was infuriating, believed at points, but it was always the same. Yeah, Jason Garrett, the clapping really was it, wasn't it? Just when you say it was something that was such a trigger after a point that you'd see the play and it was a clapping and you just went, get mad at him. Just get mad. Get mad. Come on, Rocky, get mad. And no Alfred Collins slander. No Alfred Collins slander from you, Nate. I'm happy Alfred Collins coming back. He's going to get coached up this year. We're getting full potential. I'm going to start drinking some Kool-Aid already. Got to be drinking the Kool-Aid. Right Guy from New Mexico says, for my defensive MVP, you can't choose anybody else other than Sweat. No, you can. I think Byron Murphy had a great year, but Sweat has got to be the guy. Dude had a great year for my offensive MVP. I got to go with A.D. Mitchell. He completely revamped our offense this year and was a good complementary receiver to Xavier Worthy. He was the missing piece, and if you know what Texas, how that offense is built, and that's why the year ago that he wanted to have Isaiah Neyor and he wanted to have enough weapons. Sark loves to have the weapons where he can spread the ball out and you never know what's coming, and he's able to pick you apart with that too many weapons offense. And they were a weapon short last year. You add A.D. Mitchell and you add a great weapon. It is something you worry a little bit about next year because you're losing so many of those weapons. And can the younger guys step in and become those weapons? You add Matthew Golden, who's a little bit more experienced. Jonte Cook played in a few games. You have some other great young wide receivers and some more young wide receivers coming in. But it could be a learning curve, and you're going to have to figure out who those other guys are. Jay Witt as well, by the way. I'd be remiss to not mention Jay Witt. Leaving that, you're going to have to be able to find those guys to fill the holes that are these gigantic holes that are being left by the weapons that are currently there. But they're going to have all offseason to kind of work with those, and Quinn Ewers get more reps with these guys, find out who he's comfortable with, and we'll see going into next year. Right Guy from Mexico says, for my most disliked coach, got to go with Bob Davies. Did not like him when he was at A&M and did not like him when he was here in New Mexico. Like that one. Texter also says, didn't get enough of Brooks, 2 dogs coming in. Yes, I just think if they didn't protect quarterbacks like they do, college quarterbacks are the same. That's why you don't transfer so quick. Need a power back. Yes, I think that the Cowboys do need a power back. And SaRodorick Thompson kind of is one, but you need a power back if you're the Cowboys. And then the quarterbacks, they try and protect them all you want, but it is the more you protect the quarterback, the more the quarterback will allow themselves to become vulnerable, and it becomes this kind of catch-22 because the quarterbacks don't get hit as much and they don't get hit as hard, and they don't protect themselves as well. And I think you kind of have to go back to try and get these quarterbacks to protect themselves. Because like Trevor Lawrence is a perfect example this year of a guy who continues to put himself into harm's way because he's going to try and stretch every play, and he's just the competitor in him that he wants to go. And sometimes you just got to go down, but he's going to go, and every time he's going to hurt his shoulder because he's jumping out to the side and on one arm while the guy's hitting him, and he's going to land awkwardly. We know Tua last year, he just didn't know how to protect himself going to the ground and continued to get hurt. And so a lot of these guys, because the new rules are, well, you can't really hit them that hard, they think they're going to be, more invulnerable. And in reality, they're just not taking the falls, where if you'd watch old guys get tackled, a lot of times these quarterbacks, they get hit real hard, but they would tense up for it. They would get ready. They would take the hit. They would go to the ground and they cover up and hold the ball, and they do all of that. And then they get right back up and go make the next play. So I think there's something to be said about, the more rope you give a quarterback to hang themselves, they're going to. And they continue to get hurt on plays where normally where any old school quarterback would go like, well, I would never have that opportunity to go to the sideline, then fake slide or fake going out of bounds and then get hit and ripped around. Or I wouldn't have that ability to try and dance through two linemen because a guy kind of pulled up and then he hits me from behind or I get rolled up on. Those are just things that don't necessarily happen as much back in the day, but they're happening a lot more. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll get back to the text line. We'll get back to talking some NBA action as well and whatever else you want to talk about here on the Sports Complex. We will get into it. If you text it in, we'll talk about it. I promise to try to get to everybody's text here on the show. But we'll keep it rolling here on the Sports Complex and the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Hour 2 here on the Sports Complex on a Thursday afternoon. Hour 2, we're going to get into some NBA talk. We haven't covered too much NBA as we've been going mostly football, but with college football kind of wrapping up, we'll get into more college basketball tomorrow too, but more NBA talk, more basketball talk. It is something I've covered for 20 years, so we will get into some plenty basketball talk. And if you guys want to join the conversation, you want to talk about something else, the text line is still rolling. 512-447-3776. We go with what you guys want to talk about. So if you send in topics, send in things you want to talk about, hot takes, or just join in on our Big Fat Poll of the Day. Big Fat Poll of the Day. Who is your least liked NFL coach of all time? Because we're talking about some coaches on the hot seat earlier. We're also asking who's your MVP for Texas this season. Those are the questions on the Big Fat Poll of the Day. Also going to play some sound from Hook 'em Up with E and Rob B here in hour 2. They talked to Jerry Hamilton this morning, had some very good intel on some new guys coming in to Texas. On the text side, I also did see Brooks will take the Jamal Charles path. Casuals will be shocked at how he dominates the league. I don't know. I mean, casuals maybe. I don't know. I never know the line of casuals. But I think Jonathan Brooks is going to have a really good NFL career because we've seen him continue to progress and continue to get better and better. And I don't think he's reached his ceiling yet even. And so if we know that he's going to be able to reach his ceiling and continue to grow like that, I foresee Jonathan Brooks having a good career. Just got to get healthy. You may also see, depending on who drafts him and where they draft him, that he may basically not play much his rookie season. They may push it till maybe the end of the year if they need him, bring him back, but start him on that physically unable to perform list and give him some time to recover from the injury. But knowing, well, down the line we're gonna introduce a really good running back into the class, and whether that is a second-round pick or a third-round pick, I think Jonathan Brooks could make a big impact in the NFL. We know, look, and it would have been great for him to come back, but this is a running back room that is going to be floating, and if he does come back, there is a chance somebody else goes into the portal and takes a chance of somewhere else. But C.J. Baxter and Jaden Blue, we've seen him step up. Jaden Blue's emergence at the end of the year with Brooks going down. We saw him step up. Savion Red is still going to be on this roster. There's still some really good players. Wiseman is coming in. There's some more dogs coming in that they've recruited. Tashard Choice has done a great job recruiting. He's done a great job developing in that running back room. So I'm not overly too worried about it. If you missed earlier, though, yeah, Jonathan Brooks has declared for the NFL draft. So has Byron Murphy today declared for that NFL draft. And in reality, if Byron Murphy is a bigger one because Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy leaving, we both knew it was going to happen. I think that's why Brooks is a little bit more, there was hope that he would come back. But with those guys leaving, Alfred Collins is reportedly staying. However, you're going to need some help there on that defensive line. That is a large chunk of humans. I think there's probably some restaurants down on campus that are probably pretty sad about it. You know, you have two guys that are making NIL money coming in there, eating you half out of food. I think down on campus, they may be more upset than anybody else. Like the Pluckers down there, probably not thrilled that those two guys are moving on. Just eat 50 wings apiece. Just get the catering for one, please. I'll have that. So hopefully we'll get the other guys up to speed. Text line's open, 512-447-3776. Let's talk a little NBA. We haven't talked much NBA recently. We did miss the OG Anunoby trade, which is an interesting trade. For the Knicks, they didn't have to give up too much. R.J. Barrett, they basically had to give up R.J. Barrett and Isaiah Likely. R.J. Barrett was a guy that was kind of always in this limbo of potential-wise. You thought that he could become a better player, but you never really felt like he was ever going to be, you know, a top 4 player on a championship team and a starting shooting guard on a championship team. You just didn't necessarily feel like that. Maybe if he could find a role off the bench, he could step into that role and be that guy. But he just never felt like R.J. Barrett was going to be that guy starting on a championship team. And so the Knicks have to make a move on. They bring in a guy with a little bit more size. OG is 6'7". He can play small forward for them and kind of move up and play a little bit more defense. Really good defensive stopper. His 3-point shot hasn't hit since he's gotten there, but he's been playing pretty well since he's gotten to the Knicks. I like the trade. They still feel they have the assets because they did not have to give up any first-rounders in that trade. They still do have some guys on the bench that they feel they can throw in. Mitchell Robinson, their center, has been hurt. When he comes back, that'll be a big piece added for them as well. but I think they're still out there looking that they may want to make another move, maybe at a shooting guard position. If you feel Mitchell Robinson's going to be your center, Julius Randle's your power forward. Now OG Anunoby is your small forward. Of course, you're going to have Brunson as your point guard, which means you may want to try and go out there and get a shooting guard. Not one of the harder positions to go find. That's where you may go out and look over in Chicago, whether it's a Zach LaVine or it's a DeMar DeRozan, who may be a little bit cheaper. I know they'll be talking to the Cavs about Donovan Mitchell, if that's a guy they could bring in. But I'm sure they'll be looking around. And if you can't get any of that, I think Utah would be open to getting Jordan Clarkson and moving him out to make some room for some picks or some players or whatever you could get out of that. So Jordan Clarkson is another guy, maybe another player off of Utah. Could be somebody you pick up in that deal. But I think the Knicks are not done trying to make a deal. But it is kind of starting the trade deadline. We're now into 2024. We're now past where you can trade players that you sign. We're basically 2 months away from the trade deadline. But I think we're going to start seeing some teams really start pushing the trades, and we'll see the teams. The real kicker for this trade was that the Raptors needed to kind of make a move. The Raptors are in a position where they were the 7th worst team in the NBA. Yes, there's a lottery, so you can't say they would have the 7th pick. But right now, if we're just saying they're in line for the 7th pick when they make this trade, and the issue is they have traded away their number 1 pick. Their first-round pick was part of the Kawhi Leonard trade, I believe. And so the Spurs have that first-round pick. It is top 6 protected, though. So as of the trade, the Raptors were basically going to be out of it they were losing their first-round pick because it would be the best pick that the Spurs could get out of that draft, getting the 7th-round pick. So I think they're going to be probably trying to be in real build mode. They may trade Siakam as well. We've heard rumors that Miami's going to be looking for somebody, whether it's Donovan Mitchell, whether it's DeMar DeRozan, whether it's a Pascal Siakam. We could see him they could look at him in Houston as well. They could look at him in a lot of different places. Dallas could definitely look at a Pascal Siakam because they want rebounding, and that's something Siakam could do, though it's another team that could be on the hunt for a guy like that. But I think the Raptors kind of want to make a few moves, see where they're at, and if they're going to go into full tank mode, go into full tank mode. So they make that trade and move off of OG Anunoby. But look, good trade for the Knicks on that one, and I don't know if it's a bad trade for the Raptors. I think they probably could have gotten some more for it, but they weren't able to. Also noticeable, last night after the Lakers lose again, they are now 3-9 since winning the in-season tournament. Not a great record since winning that in-season tournament. They are now looking at solutions to fix what seems to be an issue in the Lakers locker room. That's you win all games in your in-season tournament, you get it. They hang the banner, which my man Jacob pointed out was clearly, I think it was an NBA initiative. The players didn't seem to want to do it, but now it is the curse of the in-season tournament banner that they hung that thing up, and they have not been playing well since. But there now talks that Darvin Ham is now on the hot seat because even though he won the in-season tournament, everybody thought they were doing great. That now the question is he losing the locker room? And they apparently had a big meeting after their loss last night where they shut the doors and they had it out. And then as soon as it was over, LeBron James leaves and does not speak to the media. And Austin Reeves spoke after and said, of course the mood is bad. It's got to be bad if we're losing. They were asking him because they've moved Austin Reeves to the bench, which is another thing we can get into with the Spurs in just a minute. But they moved Austin Reeves to the bench, and it becomes an issue of, well, LeBron says, well, do you want to play with Austin Reeves? He goes, of course I want to play with Austin Reeves. He's really good. But for the Lakers, they feel that their second team didn't have much room, and Austin Reeves was being hampered because he couldn't do much more because he's in there with AD and LeBron, who need to be the scoring powers in that game. So they wanted to move Austin Reeves to give him some more room to score and to also spur on that second team when LeBron was out of the game. But this feels like, yet again, for LeBron haters, and I am definitely not a LeBron hater by any means, but this feels like a LeBron hater move, for a LeBron hater thing that you can really latch onto. That this feels like he's doing another one of his moves of, it's not me, it's you. Well, I'm not happy anymore because we're not, you're not able to win when I'm not giving 100%. And if we saw why were the Lakers so good in the in-season tournament? Why were they so good? Because LeBron wanted to be in there. LeBron was supposed to be on a 25 minute restriction because of his age, because of his body breaking down, and he'd go in there and he'd say, "No, I'm playing 35 minutes. I'm going to go in there and play 35, 40 minutes a game, so we're going to win these games." And after this happens, he goes, "No, I'll play the 20, 25 minutes. And I want to play with all the best players when I'm playing 20, 25 minutes. And I want to have a plus minus. My plus minus needs to be 25 points. And then when I'm out, I don't care. You guys, you need to win the game while I'm out." And the problem is, that's a contagious attitude. And I don't know if LeBron had this his whole career, because I think he played more minutes his whole career, so it wasn't so blatant. But I think now, as he gets further in his career, he feels like he should be able to take a little time back and not have to be the guy every single minute of every single day. And the problem is, the other superstar they picked, AD, doesn't want to be the guy either. And so you don't have the guy anymore. And the real only guy on that team is Austin Reeves, who is jumping for the opportunity, and he gets moved to the B team, which is not really the B team. He gets moved to the Manu Ginobili role, which is a better term for it. He gets moved into the Sixth Man of the Year award. That's the role he's trying to play. They're trying to get him some points on the bench and trying to not have it so when LeBron goes and sits down and when AD goes and sits down, this team is complete garbage. And you need Rui Hachimura to put up 25 points a game to stay in games, which just isn't going to happen. But it feels like this is something where LeBron is going to try and put it on somebody else, stretch this out, let anybody else take the blame of why they're not playing well, which is the reality is he's not pushing. And if he's not pushing, no one else on this team is going to. They're going to follow LeBron. And as much as that's not an enviable position to be in if you're LeBron, that if you take one day off, the whole team takes one day off, that's what you built. That's how much weight you carry in this. And in reality, the Lakers, the whole thing the Lakers were built was to make midseason trades. So we're midseason, we're getting there, we're past the in-season tournament, we're getting, maybe in the next month, start to make that trades. Trade off D'Angelo Russell, trade off Cam Reddish, trade off those other guys, get another star player in there that wants to go do it. Go get DeMar DeRozan in there, who wants to go play with you and who wants to go win and who wants to be a leader. Go get another guy like that. I know they keep saying they want Zach LaVine because he's the future and everything else. I get it, but you're going to have to give up so much to get that. If you can, for not a lot, and if you pull off one of those Lakers trades, go ahead and do it. But I think DeMar DeRozan is a guy that would fit in really well with this team to be a guy who could be a leader when Anthony Davis just wants to play basketball and doesn't want to talk. And when LeBron James understands that he has a million other things going on in his life right now and he doesn't really want to care in January, he wanted to care for the in-season tournament. He'll want to care when it gets later in the season. And he definitely doesn't want to be 3-9 since the postseason tournament. But if he's not going to lead the team, he can't expect the coach to do it because he doesn't allow the coach to do it. He didn't allow the coach to pull him out of games when he was in the in-season tournament. He said, "I'm playing 35, 40 minutes on minutes restriction. I'm going to keep playing." And so if you're going to say that, then you can't then on the other side say, "Well, now that I've decided I'm only going to play 20, 25 minutes, you need to get the team in shape." I'm a Darvin Ham fan. I think this Lakers team is not that far off. But the reality of it is any team that LeBron is on goes as far as LeBron goes. He is the leader. He is the heartbeat of this team. And if he wants to slow down and play 20, 25 minutes, then he needs to pick somebody else to be the leader. And I don't think he wants to do that. And I mean, if he does, it's AD, and AD don't want to do it. But asking to put Austin Reeves in the starting lineup, that, and this goes over. The Spurs are playing tonight. They're playing the Bucks at 6:30. And there's been a lot of talk about, I'll tie these in, there's been a lot of talk about the Spurs and not playing the best lineups with Wemby and trying to move things around, and Keldon Johnson getting moved down to the bench, and Jeremy Sohan got moved down to the bench, and Trey Jones, who you re-signed in the offseason, who everybody wants to be playing your starting point guard, he gets moved to the bench because they're trying to figure out when Wemby goes down, which Wembanyama right now, we knew he wasn't going to be able to play a ton of minutes because he's coming into the league as a rookie. And he's coming off of playing in the French League. He just doesn't have the stamina to go for an entire 82-game season at that level, especially when we look at his frame and you realize we can't overwork him until we get him into our gym and until we know what he's full of, what he's capable of doing. We can't do that. So we have to take our time with Wembanyama. We know that. So they're trying to do that. He also has his ankle injury that he has aggravated a few times, had the ankle injury. And so according to doctors, and this is probably an easy way to get rest management and load management on him, that he is on a minutes restriction and that he is on a can't play in back-to-backs restriction. That's what the doctors have said. Now they're Spurs doctors, and we know some people don't like the Spurs doctors, but that's what they've said. So Pop is putting him on those restrictions. So that means you've got to have your bench players. And on any team you do. And this is the problem with the Lakers. The Lakers, he doesn't want to have Austin Reeves coming off the bench and adding in on the second unit and adding in and bringing a spark off the bench. And people don't want Trey Jones. They want your best lineup to be the 5 best players. And everybody wants the 5 best players are your starters, and screw the rest of it. We'll figure it out. And the problem is it doesn't work in today's NBA. It doesn't work on an 82-game schedule. It works better when you get to the playoffs when guys are going to play 35, 40 minutes a game and your rotation shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. But when you're talking about playing 82 games in January, it's not a feasible thing to do, and a lot of teams are going to it. And Pop was the innovator of this with DeMonu Ginobili, with realizing I have a guy who's really good, but we want to play inside out. We want to play with Tony Parker. We want to play Tony Parker getting the ball down to Tim Duncan. If I have one guy cutting, it's going to be Tony. So I'm going to be good at that. You get Manu Ginobili come off the bench, and he becomes a spark, and they can play 48 minutes of great basketball. If you look at what the Warriors could do, they could kind of rotate out those big 3 and Wiggins, and they ran a different rotation to bring guys in, but when they're their best is when they had Jordan Poole and Gary Payton II, that those guys were coming in. That was when they were really good. Or we had a Kevin Durant, and you could just rotate, and it didn't matter then. But they had guys coming off the bench, and now the Warriors are having to play shorter minutes because they're getting older, and they're not there. Their team's not the same. Kuminga's stepping up, but, that's all they've got now. Especially with Draymond still out. So teams have got to figure out a way to get players and fans to understand that you do need your bench players. You do need the plus minus has gotten too effectual now that people look at a plus minus like it's a Bible. And I like a plus minus. I'll look at it on the stat guide. But the plus minus isn't the all being stat. You'll see that, and sometimes it's just a guy played 40 minutes, and so he played on the good part and he played on the bad part. Sometimes a guy plays for 5 minutes and has nothing to do with what he came up with, but it's the reality is he came in there and, he just came in at a good part where somebody else shot the lights out, and his plus minus is plus 13. It doesn't really mean anything. It was just because, or you may come in when the other team is down. That may be an issue. But you have to have depth off the bench, and that's what the Spurs, we will see tonight. If Trey Jones, reports are that Malachi Branham, Zach Collins, and Zach McDermott are all going to be out. So if Trey Jones could be entering this starting lineup, we could see more of the top 5 lineup for the Spurs. They're going to be going up against a good Bucks team, though, so who knows what will be able to happen. But we'll see if this offensive lineup is good enough to go and how bad that second lineup gets beat. You need depth in the NBA, and the Lakers right now, they have some depth, but they don't have leaders on that second team. That's why you put Austin Reeves in on that second team. But now they don't have a leader on the front team because LeBron don't want to be the leader. LeBron just kind of wants to take it easy for the month of January. And of course, if LeBron wants to take it easy, your team's going to be bad. You can't have that good of a player taking it easy. And I don't blame Darvin Ham for that. You're LeBron James. There's no coach in the NBA that is going to come in and make you play hard. You're going to make you play hard. So if there is a Lakers problem, it's because when you have watched LeBron play recently, he hasn't had the spark he had in the in-season tournament. He'll get it again. After All-Star break, he'll be just fine. But until then, if you want to make a break, trade players. I would not get rid of Darvin Ham. I would not bring in yet another coach into this Lakers run with LeBron James. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll get back to the text line 512-447-3776, asking you who is your least favorite NFL coach. We're asking you who is your MVP for the season for the Longhorns. Anything else you want to talk about, any basketball you want to talk about too, we'll get into as well. Anything else, hit us up on the text line 512-447-3776. Got some sound from Jerry Hamilton coming up as well. Some really good stuff from me and Robbie this morning. All coming up here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn, just talk some NBA and LeBron. And let me restate, I'm not a LeBron hater. I'm a fan of LeBron. I've been a fan of his for a long time, but I got to call you out when you're trying to get another coach fired. I don't know if this is the right coach to fire. And he's maybe not trying to get him fired, but definitely trying to get his way. Trying to get his way right now, and maybe not playing it the hardest he can. All right. Let's go back to the text line 512-447-3776. Text says, doing good, man. The best thing that happening. Appreciate you. Appreciate you texting in, always. Hands down, my most disliked coach of the NFL has got to be Buddy Ryan. Between putting bounties on players' heads and the way he treated staff, players, and press, he's a downright trash person. And he unleashed 2 Ryans onto us. He spread his seed onto the NFL. That sounded terrible. But Buddy Ryan is also the father of Rex Ryan and Rob Ryan, which, you may not like them either. But yeah, Buddy Ryan's definitely going to be on that list. And look, I get he was part of the Oilers too, but in part of those Oilers where there may not be a ton of fans of them. Texter says, nice piece. Totally agree with you on LeBron. Appreciate that. Appreciate you texting in. Texter says, Buddy Ryan works for me, dirtbag. Yeah, not a lot of love for Buddy Ryan out there. Not a lot of love for Buddy Ryan on the text line. I don't think you guys are wrong. I thought Jeff Fisher may be a little bit more on that list, just solely some Texas fans just let it out that Jeff Fisher ruined Vince Young's career. But I'm with you. I think Buddy Ryan may be on that list. He's definitely on the list. Let's put it that way. But he may be atop it. Chan says, worst NFL coach, Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer. He wasn't a leader. He was a bully. Lucky the players didn't stomp a hole in him. Chan. I appreciate you, Chan. That is, Urban Meyer was definitely, because Urban Meyer falls in that 1 year coach. Buddy Ryan was in the hate you hated. You hated Buddy Ryan because he kept getting jobs and he kept doing shady things. But, Urban Meyer, everybody just hates him because he came in and then looked around the room like, am I right? And everybody goes, no, you weren't right. You're the problem, buddy. Or, sorry, Urban. You're the problem. No, kickers are the worst, aren't they? Yeah, we agree in fantasy football, but they're people. They're people, Urban. I want to play some sound from Hook 'em Up with Ian Rob B this morning. They talked to Jerry Hamilton, super recruiting expert. He was watching the big all-star games from high school football, the Under Armour game yesterday. A lot of Texas players. I believe Texas had 7 recruits that were in that game. So a lot of good stuff coming out of that. And gives you some updates on that, on Texas and everything else. Always good to hear from him, and it's a good update to keep up with Jerry Hamilton. So we're going to play a little recap here from Hook 'em Up with Ian Rob B right here on the Sports Complex.
Jerry Hamilton, go to the Vaqueros hotline. He is best in the business, the senior national recruiting analyst for On3 Sports, talking college football and the recruiting season with G-Man. What's up, Jerry? Happy New Year, bud.
Hey, Jerry.
Happy New Year to you guys, man.
Hey, let's start with this. I want to get to the All-Star games and some recruiting news, but just your general take on what went on Monday night in New Orleans. Michael Penix played a heck of a game. Washington was the better team. Texas still had a chance to win the game. What were your takeaways from the Longhorn 37-31 loss?
Yeah, Texas didn't play a clean game, right? I mean, at all. I think that's fair to say. Look, and I know there's some reports out, PFF, whatever, about pressures Texas got. That's kind of a worthless stat for me. If you don't hit a quarterback, if you can't get him disrupted, those stats are somewhat meaningless. Texas did not get him to the ground. They did not disrupt his rhythm, his timing with his wide receivers. But Texas didn't play a clean game. I mean, Sark said it at the press conference. I'm sure every coach would say it, but they did not play their best game, not taking anything away from Washington. But I will make a prediction. I think Michigan's going to thump Washington. I'll go 31-13-ish. I think people are going to I think the one, I'm sure Rod's talked about it, but there were some bad signs for Washington in that game when they're looking at playing Michigan. Michigan's going to run it down their throat, and they're going to get more pressure on Penix. He's not going to have the same timing, and I think Michigan's going to win the national title comfortably.
There you go. Jerry Hamilton from On3 Sports, 31-13.
Bad matchup is what he's saying.
Yeah.
Bad matchup.
Well, and we felt like, and Rod said it for a month, that, the Texas would have been better off playing Michigan or Alabama in game one if they could have found that way to play for a national championship because of Michael Penix and the number one passing offense. and the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line attacking the Texas weakness, which is their pass defense and their secondary, which Jerry, you've talked about it a lot with us and on On 3 Sports about the Longhorns recruiting, trying to bring in more coverage in the back end. They 2 5-stars in this recruiting class with Kobe Black and Xavier Filsaime. Pick that up right there in these All-Star games. The Longhorns have 11 of their 2024 prospects playing in these All-Star games. What have we learned, or if anything, from those guys playing in Orlando and that are going to play down in San Antonio on Saturday?
Yeah, I think the main thing there is, Jordan Johnson-Rebel showed his instincts in the game. The interesting thing about all-star game settings, right, is if you're an instinctive player, you're going to show up more in the game and maybe the practices. If you're one of the elite athletes at the skill position, you're going to show up in these practices, right? That's what they're made for. And then the one-on-ones, OLDL, right, which are obviously – those are always advantaged defensive lines because it's only pass pro in the one-on-one setting. But I think Texas, look, I talked to the offensive line coach, Daniel Cruz, offensive line coach there in Orlando for the Under Armour game. They were very high on Daniel Cruz's intellect at the position, along with his size and just his knowing that was his first year playing center. I think he's done very well. Colin Simmons had a high ankle sprain, which he played with in the playoffs. So credit to him. He went down to Orlando. The trainer for the game looked at his ankle and said, yeah, he doesn't need to play. He needs to shut it down. So Colin did not practice or play in the Under Armour game, which is probably a good thing for Texas, right? I mean, get that thing healed up. You're reporting January 13th, about a week away. But Xavier Filsaime, a tremendous athlete, great build. I thought one of my takeaways from being down in Orlando, Kobe Black is 6'1.5", 6'2", 195, 200 pounds. He has very little muscle definition. So you sit there after seeing him in person, you're wondering how big is he actually going to get? Is he going to be a kid that's – I think Texas is going to have to work to keep him under 210, 215 pounds. He is going to be a big kid considering he's a multi-sport guy at a smaller school, and he doesn't have a lot of – I call him kind of a Florida high school kid because he's played at smaller school. He doesn't have – and he's played multiple sports. He doesn't have that advanced physical look like some other kids in Texas do or in Georgia where they have those athletic periods at those bigger schools year-round. These smaller school multi-sport guys tend to, I guess, progress later, and Kobe Black's going to be one of those guys. Zeno Meazulu showed very well. His length gives him a chance along with his frame. I mean, he's a guy that's going to be 6'5", 255, 260 pounds. With an 82, 83-inch wingspan, but showed good quickness, good understanding, taking coaching down there. Jarrett Gibson, great build for a running back, guys. I mean, 5'9.5", 5'10", 210 pounds. Bill, and I'm not saying he's the same player. He's not as vertical fast as Blake Corum, but with Texas fans who've watched Blake Corum, it's the exact same build. I mean, Corum, I think, is an inch shorter, 5'8.5". But they have the same build as a running back, same body structure. So Jarrett Gibson looks great physically. So I think, I think those guys showed well. All of them belong. Nobody was out of place. Obviously, the Adidas game is coming up here on Saturday, but there's been some clips of Ryan Wingo out there, which to me, the big news for Ryan Wingo is coming off a knee injury that kept him out the majority of his senior season. He's moving really well. Looks good. Trey Owens, a late addition. Ty Anthony Smith, a late addition to the Adidas game. Trey Owens had a good week of practice. Obviously, he's well prepared for an event like this. He's been working with his quarterback, coach J.P. Tillman, since the end of the season as well. Ty Anthony Smith and the punter, Ryan Kern, also in the game. So, yeah, Texas well represented, that number 3 ranked recruiting class, and now we'll see, what's left for Texas. One of the guys at the Under Armour game that I need to mention was Ryan Williams, the receiver from Saraland, the 5-star committed to Alabama. He reclassified to 2024, so he came down to the Under Armour game, played in the Under Armour game. And it was announced by Chad Simmons at On3 that his official visit schedule this month is Alabama on the 20th, Texas January 27th, and Auburn February 3rd. I still think Alabama is the favorite right now headed into those visits. But Texas is one of the final 3. They get him on campus January 27th for an official visit. If Texas pulled off the shocker there, look, Texas is looking at the number 2, possibly the number 2 recruiting class. Outside shot at 1, probably not.
Interesting.
Yeah. Jerry, what are your thoughts about Alfred Collins' decision to come back to school? Do you think that he is looking to be the next breakout star on that defensive front for Texas?
I think I think it's a good decision by him. He could have got drafted. He would have gone and tested well, right? He would have got drafted. He has a career playing football because the NFL will look at him and say, this is what we can get out of him that's still there. I think it's smart of him to come back because he needs to be a consistent player, not just a consistent player on the field, but a guy that's actually making plays. And he's been one of the enigmas for me in the Texas program because his talent is that of a high draft pick. His performance has not consistently been there. His playmaking, he shows some flashes, but he's still more flashes than what he needs to be as far as a consistent player. I think he's got a unbelievable upside, but it's getting a little late for him to achieve that upside. So this is going to be his opportunity to go from a late round draft pick to a guy that teams look at and say, okay, should we take him in a third or fourth round? I mean, his ability is high. Now, he is a second round level talent. I mean, his length, his burst, he's going to test well, his frame. I mean, he's got everything there, but consistency has always escaped him. He needs to show that he is very serious about football and wants to be a big-time player. If he does that, he'll have a really good season for Texas.
He is Jerry Hamilton, the senior national recruiting analyst at On3 Sports. Find him on the X platform at @G_Hamilton_on3. The number 3, by the way. Jerry, Bo Davis is a name that's out there. Brian Kelly over at LSU is rebuilding his defensive staff after a miserable year on that side of the ball in Baton Rouge. What are you hearing on who the defensive coordinator choice might be when they're trying to upgrade that spot? And what about Bo Davis? There's reports out there that maybe LSU would make an offer to their alumnus, Bo Davis, and try to bring him back. What are your thoughts on both of those things?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting how it plays out for LSU with Brian Kelly. To me, he's not the guy that hires the position coaches before the DC. I think by him blowing out the entire defensive staff yesterday, he probably has a pretty good idea. You know, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see Bob Diaco, his former DC at Notre Dame, as an analyst there at LSU. Does he go that direction with someone that's familiar, or does he go outside it? I don't think anybody really knows yet. I'll say this, LSU should make a run at Bo Davis. I've heard Bo Davis, Corey Raymond as DB coach possibly, but we'll see who that D coordinator is. And I'm not saying Bo's going to take the job, but they should make a run. Heck, Nick Saban's made a run at him. Billy Napier, when he was hired at Florida, made a run at Bo Davis. They should make a run at Bo Davis. I mean, these guys, if they're really good coaches, they should want him as their defensive line coach. I mean, he's one of the top handful in the country. He also makes $1 million a year and has a big buyout. So, how does that factor in? And then there's the fact that, he's about to get a raise from Texas. I mean, he's won some defensive line coach of the year awards. Obviously his family's in the Kingwood area. But he is a LSU alumnus, as you said, and LSU should make a run at him. If you're Sarkisian, you want guys on the staff like Jeff Choate hired at Nevada. You want guys that other people want. If you don't, then you kind of scratch your head, right? I mean, Bo Davis is one of the elite line coaches in the country. Many SEC programs have come after him. They'll continue to come after him. But I think Texas, I don't think it comes down to money with Bo Davis, but he'll get a raise from Texas this year. But I think, eventually it'll come down to, who's LSU's defensive coordinator? What's all that fit for all the guys that would be on that staff? I think that's so important because Bo has a good fit. He's in a good place at Texas right now. Obviously, he's got some really good players coming in. And he's had great success, and obviously he's been at Texas once before, and his family lives in the Houston area, north of Houston and Kingwood. So we'll see what happens, but LSU should come after him.
Hey, Jerry, what are you hearing, if anything, about the linebacker position coach for Texas and who they are interested in, who are the type candidates for the spot, or have they already zeroed in on their guy?
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. I think something will come out here in the next few days on that. I mean, the two names you hear, John Nansen at Arizona, who's the DC. and Ken Norton at UCLA. I mean, obviously familiarity with both with Sarkisian. I think that's kind of important. So we'll see. I think Nansen at Arizona is probably the first pick. We'll see what happens there. I mean, there's some things. I think there's going to be a couple of things here happen in the coaching carousel late here. Well, you know, what happens if Harbaugh goes to the NFL? Somebody's got to get Michigan. Who is that? Kalen DeBoer? I mean, I guess we'll find out, right? I mean, is Kalen DeBoer going to pass up Michigan to stay at Washington? I would say he would not. So then what happens? Does Jed Fish end up at Washington? I mean, so there are some things going on here late if Harbaugh leaves for the NFL, which I think many people expect, that are going to kind of shake up this coaching carousel. Then if Arizona has an opening, what do? I mean, so it's going to be interesting to see. But to answer your question, I think Nansen at Arizona to D.C., and then Ken Norton at UCLA are the two names you've heard the most.
It's interesting because during the week I was in New Orleans, Jerry, I heard the name. If the big conversation there was that if Jim Harbaugh does jump to the Bears or somebody in the NFL, that Brian Kelly at LSU would be the top choice of the Wolverines. If they try to poach him back and bring him and take over Michigan, that would be crazy to think what that would do to the dominoes in the coaching carousel.
Exactly. There's that as well, right? Because right now Brian Kelly has no OC or DC at LSU. I think I would suspect, and I'd heard that as well 3 weeks ago. I would suspect if Harbaugh makes that jump to the NFL, that either Kalen DeBoer or Brian Kelly is the next coach at Michigan.
Wow. What a shakeup that would be. Last thing, Jerry, on the way out, any thought for the Aggie fans out there how Mike Elko has done building his coaching staff there? We know, Colin Klein on the offensive side of the ball. What kind of grade do you put on what Mike Elko has done for his first staff with the Aggies?
Yeah, I think he's done a good job. Look, Trooper Taylor, Holman Wiggins, SEC recruiters, years of SEC experience, also recruiting in Texas, right? I think those are good hires for Texas A&M. I'm not saying great hires. I think good hires for them, solid hires. I think he's done a really good job putting this staff together, as you'd expect. I'm very interested here coming up. So one of the next things is the junior days, right, for the juniors around the state of Texas and the country. Those are all coming up in a matter of – Texas has their first one January 20th. I think A&M's first one is January 21st. So it's going to be interesting to see some of these names that start jumping up and saying they're attending the junior days around Texas A&M here late January. But I think he's done a good job with the staff. I think he's got guys who are going to be able to sit in those battles in the state of Texas and in the SEC region and go to battle for Texas A&M. I think he's built a really good staff. I think it's going to be interesting. I don't know what Rod's thoughts are, but to see where A&M goes offensively under Colin Klein. Is it going to be similar to Kansas State? Is it going to be much more different? I would think it has to be much different in the SEC. I don't see that transition being the same. The scheme at Kansas State versus what they're going to do at A&M.
Yeah,
Jerry.
I totally agree with you on that, Jerry.
Yeah.
Okay, ask you this, Jerry, just real quick. Why haven't we heard Quinn Ewers' announcement yet? Like, what is he waiting on?
That's a great question. Probably Pete Thamel's schedule to slow down, right? I mean, that's the best I can come up with, right? I mean, I do think it'll be. I haven't heard anything different than that Quinn's still leaning to coming back to Texas for another year. Nothing's changed on my end. I actually talked to somebody earlier this week, and literally nothing's changed on that. But I don't have the answer as to why.
That was a good answer, though. I like that.
Yeah, my thought is they're going to go day by day. Each player gets his day, right? It was X-Man on Tuesday, Alfred Collins yesterday, more to come. We'll see. It'll probably be A.D. Mitchell or somebody today.
Social media strategy going on.
That's right. Don't want to overshine anybody else. Hey, Jerry, thanks, man. Great to hear you. We'll check in when we can again here soon with so much going on. Great insights as always, and Happy New Year.
Thanks, Jerry.
You got it. Happy New Year, guys.
All right, there you go. That's all the intel you need.
Good stuff there from Jerry Hamilton, always keeping us up to date. Did you see a text? A tweet. I'm going to verify that it's from the right person before I say it out. We'll hit the rest of your text, wrap things up here on the Sports Complex. When we come back on the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. All right. We got to get out of here. Did just see the news. Apparently, Ohio State has found their next quarterback in Will Howard. Did not think we were going to see Will Howard from K-State to Ohio State. Didn't see that one coming. But apparently that's what's happening. I don't know. Maybe Ohio State's going to get another one. We're in a 2-quarterback system. Who knows? But Will Howard to Ohio State. He's committed to Ohio State. That is, was not expecting that one. Chan also says, wifey is cooking with Kewpie mayonnaise. Oh dear, my lips are sealed. Don't want to be in their doghouse. Don't get in the doghouse, Chan. Just throw it under the table for the dog. That's all you got to do. We got to get out of here. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, be kind, be safe, keep your underwear clean. We'll see you right back here on the Sports Complex.